Welcome back to Meaning in Christ. Was Jesus God? Human? Both? Today, we're going to try to uncover one of the most profound truths of Christianity. How did Jesus of Nazareth, a carpenter's son from a small village, come to be worshipped as God by millions across the globe? This question is as fascinating as it is transformative, and over the course of this video, we'll unpack the history, theology, and enduring significance of this remarkable story. To understand how Jesus became God, we must first step into first-century Judea, a land steeped in Jewish traditions and Roman rule. This was a world of expectation, where many Jews longed for a Messiah to deliver them from the oppression of the Romans. In Jewish tradition, Messiah means anointed one. It referred to a king God chose to lead the Jewish people, much like King David. The Messiah was expected to restore Israel, establish justice, and usher in an era of peace. Importantly, this concept did not include divinity. The idea of the Messiah being God was unthinkable in a culture rooted in strict monotheism. And yet, this is exactly what Jesus' followers came to believe. So, how did this transformation happen? Let's begin with the resurrection, the event that changed everything. The resurrection of Jesus is not just the cornerstone of Christian faith, it's the turning point in understanding his divinity. About 20 years after Jesus' death, the Apostle Paul described him as the Son of God in power by his resurrection from the dead, Romans chapter 1:4. But what does this mean? In Jewish thought, resurrection was seen as a future hope for the righteous, a sign of God's ultimate justice, but not a marker of divinity. Jesus' resurrection, however, granted him a unique status above all others, redefining what it meant to be God's chosen one. And as this belief moved beyond Judea and into the Greco-Roman world, its meaning began to shift. In Hellenistic culture, divinity was often associated with extraordinary power and status. Stories of gods interacting with mortals were part of everyday mythology. For Gentiles, the resurrection was not just proof of Jesus' authority, it was evidence of his divine nature. The title Son of God, which in Jewish tradition referred to a king or representative of God, took on a much more literal meaning in the Greco-Roman world, where Son of God often referred to semi-divine beings like Hercules. Another key title that evolved was Lord. For Jewish followers, calling Jesus Lord, Adonai, showed deep respect and acknowledged his role as teacher and master. However, within Jewish worship, Adonai was also used as a substitution for Yahweh, the sacred name of God. After the resurrection, this title took on a theological significance among Jesus' followers, signifying his unique relationship with God. But as the Christian message spread into the Greco-Roman world, the title Lord, Kyrios in Greek, gained even greater significance. In Greco-Roman culture, Kyrios was used to denote supreme authority, often reserved for divine figures or emperors. By calling Jesus Lord, early Christians were not only affirming his divinity, but also challenging the imperial cult that reserved the title for Caesar. One of the earliest Christian hymns, Philippians 2:6-11, captures this revolutionary shift. It describes Jesus as having the form of God, but humbling himself to take on human form, only to be exalted by God so that every knee would bow to him. This hymn reveals how Jesus' identity as divine began to permeate worship and theology. The miracles of Jesus also contributed to this belief in his divinity. For Jewish followers, his miracles recalled the deeds of prophets like Elijah and Moses, who acted as agents of God's power. But for Gentile Christians, these miracles, walking on water, calming storms, feeding thousands, echoed Greco-Roman stories of gods demonstrating their power over nature. These interpretations further elevated Jesus from a human Messiah to a divine being. The same cultural reinterpretation happened with the concept of divine sonship. In Jewish tradition, the Son of God symbolized a kingly or communal relationship with God. But for Gentiles, familiar with myths of gods mingling with mortals, the title became a literal declaration of divinity. This shift fundamentally transformed Jesus' identity in the eyes of non-Jewish believers. The Eucharist is another example. For Jewish Christians, the shared meal was a way to remember Jesus' teachings and sacrifice. But for Gentile Christians, influenced by Greco-Roman mystery religions, the Eucharist became a mystical act of communion with the divine, reinforcing the idea that Jesus was present as God during the ritual. Even the cross itself transformed. For Jewish followers, the crucifixion was a profound paradox, a sign of shame that became a symbol of God's vindication through the resurrection. In the Greco-Roman world, however, stories of gods like Dionysus and Osiris overcoming death to bring life to their followers helped Gentiles view Jesus' death and resurrection as evidence of his divine power over life and death. This evolution wasn't immediate. It took centuries of theological reflection and debate. At the Council of Nicaea in 325 CE, church leaders affirmed that Jesus was of the same essence as God the Father, countering claims that Jesus was merely a created being. The Nicene Creed declared Jesus as God from God, light from light, true God from true God, solidifying the belief in his full divinity. So, how did Jesus become recognized as God? The journey began with his resurrection, was shaped by the devotion of his followers, and was reinterpreted as his message spread across cultural and religious boundaries. For Jewish Christians, Jesus was God's anointed one, a human exalted by God. For Gentile Christians, he became God in the flesh, embodying divine power and presence. This fusion of Jewish monotheism and Greco-Roman ideas of divinity created a theology that continues to shape Christianity today. It challenges us to explore how cultural perspectives can shape faith and how beliefs evolve to meet the needs of diverse communities. If you found this video meaningful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and be sure to check out my other videos. For those interested in diving deeper into topics like these, check out the link in the description where you'll find ebooks that explore these subjects in more detail and help support the channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time as we continue exploring the intersections of faith and history.